Welcome to Homemaker Chic podcast. Did I stutter? Welcome to Homemaker Chic
Yeah.
podcast, where we are rescuing the art of homemaking from the daily grind. Red lips, no jumpers, you know the drill. This is something we've been talking about for the last couple years, and we are finally going to deliver. It's going to be fantastic. We have been talking about money. You've heard my story. You've heard Shay's story. We'll repeat it a little bit today if you haven't. But we are so pleased to welcome Shay's dear friend, Amber Gunn, to the show today. She's going to school us and encourage us. She is a homemaker. She's a mother of 5. So we have a lot of connecting points. I know you're going to feel a really great connection to her. She and her husband own multiple businesses. They manage their own rental properties. So she's got a whole school of experience, and she's going to really encourage us in the art of finance today.
I'm so excited you're here, Amber. You guys, this is fun too, because you get to see her if you're watching on YouTube. Amber lives like 2 minutes down the road from me, but
yes,
she's zooming
it's a special privilege that not many people have.
This is really exciting. And the reason I wanted to bring Amber on is because Amber is a dear friend of mine, and Amber is one of those dear friends that you get to talk about money with. And first off, I've heard many pastors say there's 2 reasons that they see most people in their offices: sex and money. And it begs the question, why don't we feel like we can even have this conversation about money? Why is it such a off-topic thing?
Because I think people can very quickly veer into cringy areas with money. Like money touches parts of our past and our childhood, our most intimate experiences that it can bring a level of intimacy to the conversation that people really aren't ready for, or garishness. So then when people overshare about their money, then suddenly it's like, is this a boasting thing? And because we automatically compare ourselves to everyone else around us, that's a very human thing to do. So then you immediately begin feeling inadequate or superior if you don't put your feelings in check one way or the other. So it just introduces all kinds of uncomfortable conversations that maybe can sometimes be better saved for more intimate relationships, unless you're just giving really broad financial advice.
Well, that's, I guess, what we need to that needs to be our goal today, because we have homemakers listening in from all over the world. And I'm sure that everybody listening in is in a different position. So we have people who are potentially just starting out, learning how to manage money. We have people who have been doing it wrong. We have people who maybe have a lot of it, but still aren't managing it well, and their money is sort of still in charge of them. And so we wanted to, this season is all about staying the course. Is that how we put it, Angela?
Yeah.
Staying the course. Okay. So we thought, what a great idea to bring in this idea of staying the course with money. Because whether you have a little bit of it or you have a lot of it, Dave Ramsey says you need to control your money or your money controls you. It doesn't matter if you have $5 or $5 million. You either are in charge of it or it's in charge of you. And so we are hoping to kind of bring some best practices to the homemaker today that she can implement in her home as the homemaker to make sure that things get on the rails and stay on the rails. So where do we even begin with that, Ange? Go.
Well, I think it's important with money. I mean, I think one of the reasons why it can be such a touchy subject is we kind of just set aside our pragmatism and we get emotional about it
Instantly.
And I think if you're really pragmatic, my mom always says, it's going to make my mom sound so shallow. She's always says there's always somebody richer than you and somebody thinner than you. Okay, thanks, Mom. But I mean, that's it. Like, you have to be able to talk about money and just own where you are. What about it? And that's why I think it makes it difficult to have that conversation with a variety a broad scope of people is because there's so many different dynamics, and you start taking things personally, you start apologizing, you feel shame, or whatever, pride, whatever end of the spectrum you're on. And I think it's just really important to just be really pragmatic about it. This is something we all have. Some of us have more, some of us have less. Some of us have better discipline, some of us have more knowledge and understanding on how to use the tool instead of it using us. And I think pragmatism needs to reign supreme.
Okay, so here's my first question, Amber. You are a homemaker. So why is the home economy important to the home? Why should it be important to the home?
Well, ultimately, and being economical just means managing the resources that you have, which of course are limited, even if you are the wealthiest person in the world, Elon Musk. Ultimately, there's a limit to whatever that is. It's just that some limits are much higher. So managing your resources in the most effective and efficient way, whether that's really small or whether that is a lot. But I think that something that people often get wrong about money is that money is ultimately a tool and it is not a treasure. But what happens is that people begin thinking of money like a treasure that they want to store up. You want to accumulate it, you want to save it. You have all kinds of financial gurus who have made a whole career on how do you get to the end of your life with as big of a pile of money as possible. I think as homemakers, our vision of money needs to be broader than that, because hopefully your goal is not to get to the end of your, I'm saying this as the wife of an investment manager who helps people manage money for their retirement or planning for it. But we just have a different view of money. Money is a tool, and hopefully by the time you get to the end of your life, your goal is not to have the biggest pile of money. And if it is, you have too narrow of a view of your impact as a homemaker and as a mother. So one of the things that you can keep in mind with money being a tool is generosity, for example. Some people, I remember, speaking of backgrounds, I was the daughter of a farmer. My dad slipped into really hard times. We didn't have any money. Through high school, I had to work. I had to quit playing sports, worked part-time, tried to save my money for college, all these things. I know what it's like to scrimp and save and live in the moldy apartment when you're first married and all of the things that are terrible. And it feels like when you're in that position, how can I possibly be generous? And some of that is just your youth. It's not just that you have a small amount of money, it's that you have a small amount of life experience. Or sometimes, as we say in Christianity, sanctification, right? Like the Lord works on you over time and he begins chipping away at these parts of you that are all about me and myself. But the widow's mite, for example, she was very poor, and her offering that she brought before the Lord was pointed out by Jesus to say, this is her offering was more valuable than the Pharisees and these rich guys who bring all their money in. The point is, no matter how little money you have, if you begin thinking about ways that you can be generous to other people and how you can prioritize that, and it's not just with your money, it's with your time. You can be generous with your time because time is actually a treasure. Time is the ultimate treasure. Money is just a tool. And the richest people in the world work really hard to make their money try to buy them more time, because time is the treasure that they can't buy more of. And we all have the same amount of time.
So it's important too, because money as a tool, that's a tool that we do use in our homes. That's not the root of our treasure in our homes, of course. And yet it's still a piece, a tool that we use, that we leverage to make our homes run and to run well. And in some ways position us to be able to set up for that treasure or for service, right?
Right. So this is where, if you think about the road, the good management road for money is stewardship, stewarding your finances well. And on either side of the stewardship road is a ditch that you do not want to fall into. One ditch is austerity. And that is where this is the principle of saving and piling as much money as possible. Now, there might be a time in your life where you need to do that for specific reasons to reach specific goals. But generally, austerity, it can lead to idolizing your money because you're counting every penny and you're making everyone miserable around you. This is why I just
It's
have
like
a
being on a
problem with
diet.
the whole FIRE movement that everybody's doing, where they make their whole family miserable and everybody eats beans and rice for 20 years so they can retire at 41 and take Instagram photos. And maybe I'm simplifying that, but that is kind of, that's a pretty miserable way to live. And it'll be interesting to see how that pans out when these people are 65 and they realize what they did with their younger years. So that's the ditch of austerity, where you are just treasuring and saving every penny that you can and living a very miserable life for an extended period of time so that you can have a giant pile at the end. And then the other side is profligacy, where you are going way off the rails. You're not paying attention to what you're spending. You're spending too much money. You're living beyond your means, and you are hurting your family in that way because you're refusing to open your eyes and look at what you have before you and live within your means.
I'm going to, for people in the audience that aren't familiar with that word, I want you to say that word again.
Profligacy.
Profligacy. Okay.
Yeah.
I've never heard that word before.
Sorry. Okay. Profligate. Profligate spending. Profligate means in excess. It means just without any breaks, spending with no breaks.
Go.
Okay.
So even if you don't know what the word means, you sure as heck know what the action is. And you know it when you see it, and you know it when you do it.
Yeah.
I don't know how this is for a segue, but I do want to say real quick, take a pause, speaking of spending, and say thank you to our sponsor, American Blossom Linens. So, Amber, have you heard the saying, we're too poor to buy cheap things?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Well, it's in that vein that we do invite you to go and shop American Blossom Linens. And Angela's going to pull up the code and all the information because I don't have it in front of me right now. And I know she does.
The code you want to remember is Fall Shake 20. So if you have been, back in the day, I used to put a ball jar on the top of the refrigerator. If you've been saving in your ball jar to buy some American Blossom Linens, this is the code you want to use. Fall Shake 20.
There you go. And this is one of those pieces. So we talk about bringing pieces into your home and frankly, being a wise steward of what you've been given. When it comes down to it, there are really few simple luxuries. To me, having a safe, clean bed to lay in at night is genuinely one of those luxuries. When if everything else was stripped away, that one would still remain. So you can visit AmericanBlossomLinens.com and you can use that code and shop their incredible products that they have made available for your bed. So, Angela, remind me, what was the mile thing that Janet told us about recently?
Yeah. So the average, if you run to Kohl's or wherever and you're buying sheets made in India or made in China, we're talking about like an 8,000-mile trip on cargo ships. And I don't know, can they even get into the country right now? I don't know. And so I know a lot of our audience is really passionate about working with American companies. They're worried and passionate about their carbon footprint, air pollutants, etc. So you've heard me say it before. With American Blossom, the cotton is grown here. The factory is here where they're weaving these products. The team that puts the box together to send to your door, when you open the box, you're going to feel the love. It's immaculately packed. Everything's creased and folded and perfect. There's a little bag of tea in there for you so you can make a cup of tea and enjoy your new sheets. This is a company that goes the extra mile. They have a 2-year happiness guarantee. Like, that's the kind of thing you get with a mattress, not with a pair of sheets, okay? So visit AmericanBlossomLinens.com. They are the official season sponsor of season 22, and you can use the code FALLCHIC20 because we can't afford to buy cheap things.
Yeah, no, it's really true. We do all have
And
limited resources.
you
Go.
spend 1/3 of your life sleeping. That's all I have
Right?
to say.
Don't
1/3 of your
disregard
life.
that.
Sleep is a treasure.
It is.
Okay, so Amber, tell me where and what do you see? Because I know you and Cody see all kinds of things from all kinds of people. What do homemakers get the most wrong when it comes to the home economy?
I would probably say it goes back to my first answer. It is the mindset about money. Your mindset about money needs to remember that time is your treasure, money is your tool. And that's a principle that you put at the front. And stewardship is what you put at the front. And then all of the methods about how you do that, those might change over time. So one method is putting first things first. So first things first, just deciding what are the most important things. For us, one of the reasons generosity is important is because we're required to do that as Christians. We're to remember that we don't, everything that we own does not belong to us. It belongs to God, and we're just stewarding it. And it helps us by giving it away that we remember it wasn't ours to begin with. But for a lot of people, for practical budgeting purposes, you need to put all of your first things first. This is the basic stuff, you know, your food, your shelter, your all of these things. And by the way, I think what happens is you're going to go through times in your life, hills and valleys, right? This is very normal for every person, where you're going to have times where you're going to have more money than you thought you could ever have for whatever reason, compared to what you had before. Wow, 5 years ago, this was terrible. Now it's great. Or the opposite. We had so much money and now we're starting over and this is horrible. And what do we do? So it's not that the principles change, but the methods may change. So what I say about the personal budget is the same thing that I tried to tell legislators when I talk to them about government spending. We call it zero-based budgeting. Okay. So when you are in a budget crunch, you need to start from ground zero-based. What people like to do is they like to carry forward. So even if you're a budgeting person and you already know how to do these things, you say, okay, I have this much for housing and this much for food. And so then you just push your budget forward and you go, there's no room anywhere. Start with your blank paper. Start all over, which is really depressing. Start over and start at zero and then assign categories. And because sometimes you might have to make major changes in your life to fix a financial problem that may or may not have been your fault. And this is just the reality of being a human. And so that may include things like selling your home, selling your cars at the really high end of the spectrum, or tapping into a retirement account. I don't know what it is about, this is a big mistake that people make in their mindset about money, I think, personally. I know you talk to a lot of financial people and they would totally disagree. But they say that your retirement account is an untouchable in your life. For no reason whatsoever are you to ever touch your retirement account. And if you do, you're a terrible human being who has managed your whole life wrong. Okay. But the reality is, again, that money's a tool, not a treasure. And there are times in your life, if something terrible happens, someone has a medical diagnosis, someone has a horrible accident, you go through bankruptcy, your business gets sued. There's any number of things that could happen to you where you go, you know what? We are going to use that retirement money because we have to. And you know what? Because this is something we have to do, then I'm not going to sit here and feel guilty and beat myself up about it. This is not some untouchable zone. We're going to use it to serve our family now because this is what we have to do. And just do that then.
Mm-hmm. I didn't even know you could do that, by the way, until like a month ago.
You can do that, but
I didn't know that.
Again, that is an emergency situation because the government doesn't like you to do that, and they will absolutely punish you. So not only will you pay the income tax rates, but you will also pay a penalty for early withdrawal. So it's a real thing.
But there's special accounts. This is how I learned about that. Is like our financial advisor was like, you have this. It's basically like a glorified savings account where it's not as accessible as if you could just go to the ATM and withdraw cash. But it's not like a set retirement account. And by the way, you guys, I cannot tell you how many conversations I have had with Amber and Cody. And I'm like, explain this to me. Talk to me like I'm 5. Apparently talk to me like I'm 2.5. Okay, forget talking to me. I am a newborn and I know nothing. No matter how many times people explain this to me, it doesn't make sense. So I don't remember the name of this account, but it is like a glorified savings account where if you have a hard time saving, this is a good one where it'll just take money out of your bank account, put it into this retirement savings account. Do you know which one I'm talking about, Amber? Do you know what that's called?
I don't.
Okay.
Because you said it's
I'll
not a
think of it.
retirement account.
I mean, it's tied to it, but it's not one. You don't pay the penalty for taking money out of it.
I don't know. Cody would probably know what it's called.
Okay. I'll think of it and I'll put it in the notes. But that's a resource that you can have when you need it, which is great. And so there is a way to set it up in that way where you don't get quite as dinged, I believe. So anyway, that kind of covers what to do when things go wrong, right?
I do have a question, Amber. Do you think, I mean, we live in a, it's not like it was a long time ago where it was really you could visually, historically speaking, you could visually tell who had money and who didn't. We live in a really fast goods economy. Do you think that the average homemaker, the average family has maybe lost perspective on what things first actually are?
Most likely, yes. And I think most people probably, if they honestly just sit and self-reflect on that question for a minute, they would probably agree. And because part of it is whatever you spend your time watching or listening to, those things will take root in your heart, right? So if your Instagram feed is full of all kinds of lifestyles or trips or spending or kinds of things that make it appear that everyone lives this way, then you will begin resenting your life. You will feel inadequate and you will feel like you have failed somehow. I know someone who does one of the I don't mean to say pyramid scheme. I don't want to put it down. It's a thing where she sells stuff and then she gets rewards. And she went on this trip because she got it as part of her thing, right? It was great. Except it wasn't. She made like 15 videos advertising how great it was that this trip that she got. And behind the scenes, she texted me like pictures of what the room looked like or all these other things. My point is it was a facade, right? So anything that you see someone from the outside that might be putting something forward, always understand that may or may not be real. It may or may not be helpful too. And so when you're watching someone's content, you should just take a minute and ask yourself, is this helpful? Is this edifying? Does this better help me serve my family and people around me, or does this detract from that?
Mm.
And you know the answer.
Mhm.
You know the answer.
Mm. My kids and I have been playing this game lately because, as you both know, we were car shopping a while ago and just kind of put the brakes on it. Like, no, this isn't the right time for us. So now they find like the junkiest cars that they can find when we're driving down the road. And they're like, I bet that car's paid off. I bet that car's like, who's laughing now?
Right?
Because you're right. It's this facade.
Mhm.
And look, this isn't like a new thing. This is keeping up with the Joneses. This has been rooted in the human heart for a
Yeah.
very long time.
Yeah. It's the algorithm that's new, though. It's just this constant exposure and like this shifting of your mindset to what is normal.
And consumer debt, because it can look very shiny on the facade.
Yeah.
Right. It didn't used to be, I don't think, quite as hard to distinguish between, like you said, Angela, people who have money and people who didn't. And that's not true anymore because we're able to leverage things like consumer debt.
Mm-hmm. And I think that there's all kinds of really valuable books and information available to homemakers about how, like, if they're looking for specifics about how to do a budget, there's a wealth of information about how to do that. I do think that it's less talked about, and certainly, even though my dad was a farmer and owned a farm, and he was a very hard worker, but it was never explained to me as a kid or at any other point in my life. I kind of had to figure it out and stumble into it myself, that your money is going to sorry, I just lost my train of thought. I will get there.
Well, one of the things, I don't know if this is where you were going with this, but one of the things I remember you pointing out to me years ago, Amber, was that I came out of this just like horrible, poor situation that Dave Ramsey helped me get out of. And then when we bought our house, all the Dave rules said, no, don't buy this house. And I thought to myself, like, I know I can use this house. I can leverage this home to build something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was feeling. Sorry, I was going to talk about budget versus capital. Yeah,
there you go. Because
exactly
you
right.
were the one who were like, no, debt can be actually used to propel you forward. Debt can actually be a good thing. Isn't that weird?
It is weird, and you got to be really careful with it because not all debt is the same, right?
Right.
Consumer debt is not the same as business debt.
Mm-hmm.
So, even though a home debt, because they're so subsidized by the government, and there's all these things that make it very cheap to borrow, generally speaking, even with higher interest rates, you still want to be careful and not outhouse yourself. Like some of my husband's former clients are just people that we have known throughout our lives. One of the biggest problems that people run into when they start to get a little bit of money is they will get outhoused really fast. And that's the whole keeping up with the Joneses. And being outhoused means you're not satisfied with the home that you have made and that you have built, because suddenly you might have the ability to leverage a little bit more to get a better home, a bigger home with a pool, all these other things, or a vacation home or whatever it is. And it's the second mortgages or the third mortgages that really begin sinking people, even though they're making a lot of money with their salary or other things, they get outhoused. And so that's just a heart problem, right? Because versus learning to be content in your home with what you have and being truly happy and realizing, oh my gosh, 10 years ago, I could not have imagined that we could live this way. And I'm just going to sit and I'm going to be content with this. And I'm going to make banana bread for my family and light some candles and just spread some hot butter on it and sit down together.
Are you hungry right now?
I don't know. I just was thinking it's fall.
She ate some of my banana bread yesterday. That's why she said that.
That is fine.
Okay, so then though, when things are good, maybe when things we talked about when things are bad, okay, here's what we can kind of do. When things are good, what do people do then with that excess that shows that their heart is in the right posture?
Mm-hmm. So that, well, they're kind of two different. Well, you can increase your generosity for one. Um, you can look around for ways that you, so maybe instead of just tithing or just giving to one nonprofit, you can begin increasing. And sometimes you might look for individuals, people around you that you know are really in hard times or in a hard moment, and quietly find ways to be generous to them. And that's just kind of the pass-through mentality of trying to be open-handed with your money as opposed to closed-fisted. People tend to go one of two ways as they become more wealthy. They become more open-handed or they become more closed-fisted. And if you're not intentional about how you think about your money, the normal automatic posture for most people is closed-fisted. And I think for most homemakers, that's probably not who they want to be. So it's important to just be intentional about that so that you don't accidentally stumble into it.
That idea of being able to be that much more generous, if you can paint a picture, homemakers, of yourself, wherever you are, whether you're renting an apartment or you own a home, imagine being there. Imagine feeling contentment in your heart. Imagine inviting people to your table and putting out a spread for them and being able to be that much more generous. I mean, I'm sure I've shared this story before, but when we were in Alabama and sick and poor, we drove up to Mississippi to visit some friends of ours. They had, I don't know, maybe $5 more than we had at the time. They had no money. But Lauren had bought a chicken at the farmer's market. She'd made a big pot of rice and she bought a gallon of raw milk, that was a big deal. And we sat around their table and just picked at that chicken and ate the rice and drank the milk. And there are almost no times I can think of in my life where I felt more cared for, like more soul nourished than that moment. And it wasn't because they'd put out this grand spread and spent all this money. It was because they were literally offering everything that they had and still saying, still come to our home, still come stay with us, still come share food with us. We will figure it out. We will be together. And it was one of those moments that I don't think I'll ever forget that. So that idea of increasing generosity when times are good, by the way, isn't that liberating?
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a freedom and a relief that comes with like not holding it so tightly.
You'll have to retrain yourself a little bit too, because if you've been stewarding a smaller amount of money and you're used to saying no to so many things, then you have to retrain yourself. I'm not going to be an automatic no on this anymore. I'm going to begin saying yes to some things, remembering that your time on this earth, no matter who you are, is finite. And you will reach the end and you don't know when it is. And that's also why I'm a huge, again, not a fan of a person that wants to die with the biggest pile of money. And I met a woman, so she was a friend of my family in high school. And I barely knew her. She was a friend of my grandmother, but my family didn't have any money. And when I graduated, I didn't really know you were supposed to have a laptop for school. even though this was way back in the day. Still, you needed some kind of computer to do your work, and my family just didn't have it. And I don't know how she knew that, but she gave me a check, and this was way back in 2002. So computers were a lot more
They're
expensive.
expensive.
A laptop was really expensive. And she was a retired school teacher who managed to, she saved with the purpose of being generous to people, which I learned later as I met and spoke with her. And she sent me a check and a beautiful note that said, "This is for your computer." And it was $2,500. I remember the exact amount. And she said, "Get the computer that you need. And if there's anything left over, use it for your books or whatever you need." And I was just blown away by that. And I was not the only person that she gave money to. She was a very quiet woman. And she ended up at the end of her life, she didn't have any money. She didn't die a pauper, but she just said, "Listen, I don't want to, I would rather give it away now when I can see how it changes people's lives, how they use it as tools." And so that was a really precious lesson that I learned from her, that's the kind of person that I want to be.
I love that. Never told me that story.
Her name was Jane Lovejoy too.
Oh, come on.
I know.
Some people have all the luck.
I know. Lovejoy.
Oh,
That's
that's
amazing.
so good. Angela, what's next on the list here?
Well, if we've got hard times. I mean,
Yeah.
that's why I asked the question about the like first things first. I remember in the thick of it, we didn't drink coffee.
Mm-hmm.
We live in a coffee culture. Like, can you imagine that be considered? It was a luxury. We just couldn't do it. So, and then generosity when you are doing well. And then if someone's in a financial pit, what would you recommend them to do to right things as quickly as possible, as healthily
keeping
as
their marriage
possible?
intact.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
not I never, like with Dave, I was like, I am not eating beans and rice. Sorry.
Yeah.
Not doing it. I'm here to live this life, and food is one of my greatest pleasures. So this is where we part ways, Dave.
Yeah, get on the same page with your spouse, for sure. So, and obviously, presumably, your spouse loves you, and you love him, and you want to. You might disagree on the methods, but hopefully, you can agree on the principles. So, sit down and have a conversation with your spouse about principles, about what are the principles that are driving how we spend our money. And if you're in a real pit, that is where the zero-based budgeting needs to come into play, and it needs to come into play with your spouse. Like, are we in this pit so deep that we need to sell our house and start over? Or if you don't own a house yet because you're renting, do we need to consider some really drastic and potentially humiliating requests? Like, is there family? I mean, it feels humiliating. I get that. Been there, done that. We lived with Cody's parents at one point, and for almost a year. And so I do understand that. But so what are the resources that you have available to you? People are really tempted to get upset and give up because they look at the resources that other people have, and all they say is, "I don't have that. So I can't do that." But instead, you need to sit down and do basically a brainstorm with your spouse. What are all the resources that we have? Time, money, family. What can we do? Because sometimes there might be some hustling involved. For example, like, okay, do I as the homemaker need to figure out a part-time something that I can do to help? Do I need to, is there a gig that I need to take on temporarily? What skills do I have that I can leverage to help us get out of this pit? So being as mobile as possible and stop looking at the skills and resources that other people have and just look at what are the skills and resources that my spouse and I have. And we're going to start there. And then we're going to figure out a plan.
I love that. I love that. Okay, we're going to take a second. When we come back, Amber, I want to know, like, what else, what are you passionate about? What do you want to touch on that you would want our audience to know? But really quick, we're going to break and say thank you to our sponsors.
Okay. So what you were talking about before, Amber, though, I think about when Angela, this was everything's 100 years ago now.
Everything's
This was 100 years ago when we were driving our duct taped van. The doors wouldn't stay shut.
We both had duct taped vehicles, Amber. This was our point of connection.
Imagine
We're in the duct
driving
tape
down
club.
the Malagalco Highway and like the van doors just go fly open
Gosh,
with
I
my
remember
babies in
that.
the back. I'm crying hysterical. And Angela just says, put your blinders on.
Mm-hmm.
Put your blinders on. You know, like the horses that
Blinkers.
go
Yeah.
around. Yeah,
Mhm.
they go around Central Park so they don't get distracted. Just put your blinders on. This is such a hard time to live in the world, to put your blinders
Oh,
on.
you see everything.
You see
You
everything.
see every Amalfi Coast. You see everything. Every shoe, every closet makeover, every handbag, every latte.
So you guys should know that a good portion of mine and Amber's text thread is that guy who wears the snuggly thing, where he's in the snuggly thing and he talks about being a pavo. And he'll post the most ridiculous things that people are doing, like color coding their ice, different colored ice chips or whatever. And he's like, what? You don't have different sections in your freezer for different shaped ice? That's because you're a pavo.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, you're literally seeing people's
Oh,
fancy
there's a
ice
reel like
cubes.
going around where like a lady like brings everything home from the store and then like puts it in her dishwasher.
Yes.
Or oranges and stuff like that. And I saw this reel where this guy's like, oh, there's a marble countertop flex. Oh, there's the dishwasher fruit flex. Like he's just like breaking apart her video. Oh my gosh. Yeah, you see everything.
It's a real problem.
We have real first world problems is what they are.
Mm-hmm.
And no one is immune to that. I don't care like how sanctified or whatever it is that you are. If you're exposed to it all the time, it is going to affect you. I sometimes usually so I have a rule like during the week I uninstall Facebook from my phone. I uninstall Instagram from my phone just during the week. For me personally, not everybody needs to do that. I know myself, my personality, how I go down rabbit holes. And it's not that I can't spend some time doing that. I might deliberately go and walk to my computer and do it. But I'm just not going to have it where it's a mindless act that I'm doing because again, time is my most precious treasure. And if you're mindlessly spending it on things, that's no matter how much money you make, you can't buy that time back. So if it's helpful, content, absolutely keep going for it. I wish there was a way to just, well, that's why I love podcasts, actually. I do love podcasts. I love listening to them. I listen to your guys's. I listen to RC Sproul. I listen to all kinds of things. The podcast, because they're not the 2-minute blips that just keep you scrolling endlessly. So you just have to figure out what again, time is your greatest treasure. And if people remember nothing else, just remember that.
Yeah. And there can be content that feeds you. My father-in-law always says, take the meat and spit out the bones. But you also have to be honest and check it because sometimes there's a lot more bones than meat. And it's whatever scraps you get are just not worth swallowing that many bones for. And so, there are people that I draw a lot of inspiration from, but that doesn't mean I'm going to swallow a bunch of bones to get to it. So it's just simply not worth it. And so I think for me, and I think for most people, just human nature wise, the reality is to have that contented heart that we're talking about, you actually do need to go inward from the world a bit, to put your head down and to give yourself some quiet space to remember what your treasures are. Because there's always going to be something newer and shinier that's out there. And there's always going to be somebody who has more of it. So I think that's a great idea, just taking that temptation off of your phone so that at the very least you can start to sort of retrain some of these muscles.
Yeah. And it's desensitizing. So if you limit the exposure, then that you stay stronger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
So-
present for your family, present.
Mm-hmm.
Big time. So this season is about keeping it on the rails. So what are some of your habits that you have, monthly, weekly, daily, whatever it is financially, that keep you on track?
Yeah. So, what we start with this is a hard, as business owners, this is a really hard thing to get used to because we only get paid once a quarter. 4 times a year, we get money. So you can really screw that up really fast if you're not careful. I actually think for most people are paid on a monthly or biweekly schedule. And so there's a little bit more like, oh, you only have so much, and then, oh, good, we get to start over week 2, But whatever length of time it is between your payments, I would just meet with my spouse and just go over a quick big picture. This is the pot of money we have. Are we still on track to do this? And then and to categorize it, and then to think ahead about what things are coming, whose birthdays and Christmas, and how are we going to budget? I mean, this is not rocket science as far as like, I think this is what most budgeting people say. So I'm not pretending to have some, new advice. I think it's cliche because it actually does work. Like if you just regularly and periodically sit down with your spouse and look at the pot of money that you have and make sure you're on a general track, and then depending on how strict your budget is, and the habits of your spouse and you might need to say, okay, we're going to go all cash for our eating out budget, because it's just too hard to stick to what we have decided. And like, let's say we have a checking account, we have a credit card for rewards, and we have all these things, and we're finding that we are blowing our budget on this every month. And then I just go back to the Dave Ramsey. He is good for a lot of things. And I think just doing the cash envelope thing, especially if you just need to get on track for a period of time, like let's just reset. It's almost like people do that with your fitness sometimes, right? You don't want to fall into either ditch with your fitness either. You don't want to be, lazy and not paying attention to your nutrition, not taking care of your body, making everybody miserable with your health problems because you haven't taken care of yourself. Or then going the other way and making everybody miserable because you're working out 3 hours a day, and you got to make sure you get in your workout, and everyone else, you're going to scream at people if you don't. So it's the same thing about your money. You can't fall into the ditch either way. You want to try to temporarily go, okay, we've gone off the rails a little bit, so we're going to do a tune-up.
Mhm.
You might need to do a fitness tune-up, a nutrition tune-up for a while, and well, you might need to do a money tune-up. But don't let that be the place that you camp, where you're living really miserably, making people, like you said, the rice and beans thing. Maybe the college student can do that for a while. I know I did. I mean, frankly, I lived off tuna fish, carrots, and sliced bread with some top ramen occasionally for like 3 years of college, which is terrible. I mean, honestly, I would rather die than go back to doing that. I did it for 3 years. I don't want to do it ever again. Like whatever it takes, we'll sell our house. I'm not doing that.
Mhm.
You just you just have different seasons with what you're
Right.
able to tolerate
Mhm.
and what strategies you need to employ.
So we do that first things first. We actually, Dave Ramsey has a great resource called EveryDollar, and it's an app, and you can also do it on a desktop. It's the cash system in a digital form where it pulls the transactions from your bank account. You set your budget, you literally drop and drag it. It's really simple and really smart. Because so much is paid online now, the cash envelope system is a bit trickier.
Mhm.
But one of the things that we have found is we have a general, what we call like entertainment budget, which includes whatever we want to use it for. If we want to go to a movie, if we want to go and eat out, and we take that out in cash. We have a set amount that fits within our budget. We take it out in cash at the beginning of the month when we get paid. And you know what's fun is it makes it feel really pleasurable because once it's out of your bank account, it's gone.
yours.
It's
Or if
yours.
it is- yeah. Ooh.
So when you go out and you're just like, yeah, like it's not like it's free money, but it makes it a lot more fun to spend. It's so fun to pay for things in cash, I think.
Yeah, I
So,
think anytime you can automate, try or find ways to try to automate good habits, that's really helpful. I think people need to do that with savings. And I'm totally against. I understand compound interest. Okay, this is a math issue. I'm not trying to fight the math of compound interest. It's a real thing. However, I think trying to put on people that they need to start some type of, investment account when their kid is 0, or you failed as a parent, or, you need to start this when you're 18 years old, or you failed as a human being. You're never going to have enough money to blah, blah, blah. Forget that. Okay. You'll know when you are able to start saving. And if it's really small, then I don't know, maybe some of you have used Acorns before, but Acorns is a really good automated investment type of system that you can link to your bank account, and you can tell it how much you want to pull from your transactions, and it will take the balance of the dollar. So if you spend $5.19, you can tell it to put 81 cents into your account, and it will sweep it in there. And then you can decide, is this going to be a retirement account or is this just an investment account? And that's why it's called Acorns, right? From acorns grow mighty oaks. And you can decide to double the contribution. So if you want 81 times 2 or 81 times 3, depending on how much you want to get. But the idea is that you're just putting away, like, are you really going to notice the 81 cents? No. But over time, that's a good effective way to save without feeling like you're a failure as a human being if you haven't done anything,
we already feel like that enough, don't we?
Right. Don't need
And
any
your
extras.
goals are going to change over time. I
Mhm.
mean, my oldest is 14 now, and when he was a baby, Cody and I looked at each other and we're like, listen, there's no way we're going to be able to pay for his college or anything someday. So like, we're going to just we're going to put our resources into loving him now, into caring for his health and his education now. And that is our gift to him. And it's not that we deliberately change that goal. It's that we had things happen in our lives where we're like, maybe this would be an extra gift that we didn't anticipate being able to help him with, that maybe we can now. And so you can pivot as a parent depending on what is happening to you. And the opposite is true. If you started their little account when they're 0 and, now they're 15 and, God forbid something really terrible happens to you. And I know people have had this happen this way. And then suddenly they need to take, unless it's a custodial account where you legally can't sweep the account. But if it's an account where, you need to access it for the good of the family, then that's what you need to do. And don't let some financial guru make you feel guilty about doing what is best for your family.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't get a lot of nuance from gurus.
No.
No.
Mm-mm.
Well,
I remember I did start one of those accounts when I was really young and I was making 11 or 10.50 an hour. So I had that was a dumb thing to say, even some of that. But when we moved across the country, we emptied it out. I think there was like $2,200 in this account. And the financial advisor he made me feel very guilty. He's like, well, were you robbing Peter to pay Paul? And I was like, well, Paul's hungry. So Paul needs some
Paul's
food now.
hungry. My gosh.
Okay, Angela, you posed a question to Amber before the ad break that I think would be a good question to kind of round out on. Do you remember what that was?
Yeah, I just wondered if there's anything else, any bullet point, any mantra, anything you're really passionate about that you would want our audience to know before we close.
Oh man, you're putting me on the spot. Like now I need to have something clever to say.
It's just your life in a nutshell, Amber. It's no pressure at all.
Oh man.
No.
Okay, well, I guess it's funny that I take so much joy now in calling myself a homemaker because that is not the person that I was 20 years ago. It was not the person that I was before I had children. And I think that there is that's what I love about your show. I mean, like you guys are homemakers talking to homemakers, and that's a really special conversation that something women kind of in modern history we're kind of ashamed of. Any idiot can be a mom, any idiot can be a homemaker. And the really accomplished women are the ones who hustle and get out there and they're the CEO of XYZ and everybody's writing articles about them and they're speaking about all of these things. And honestly, that's who I thought I wanted to be. And I was like, well, maybe I'll have kids, but I don't know, maybe not. And I definitely just want to be someone, I want to stand out. I want to be somebody different. I want to be the CEO. I want to be the leader. Well, as it turns out that it's so much more satisfying being the CEO of your family. Just spending the day to day, looking your kids in the eye, looking your husband in the eye, sitting down, spending time with them. I don't regret any of that. And I don't regret the choices that I have made that led me to where I am. And I would happily just say, yes, I am a homemaker first. And all the other hats that I wear in my time go to support my role, my primary role as a wife, as a mother, as a homemaker. And I think your listeners should be happy about that for them too. Everything just goes to support their role as the home is the center.
Mm-hmm. Even this idea of getting our finances in order, the hope in doing that is so that you can have a home that feels stable and safe and peaceful. That's the goal here. Yeah. Whether you're managing a ton or a little, the hope is that this isn't something that causes chaos in your home, but that it's something that you're managing well and that you're controlling well and that you're stewarding well so that it blesses your home. I mean, isn't that the goal?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
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 Okay. Well,
fantastic.
You did it, Amber. Coming on podcasts can be a little nerving if you're not used to it. So I'm glad we finally got you on.
Well, I hope you didn't hype up your listeners to the point where they were super disappointed in me.
No, it's gonna
if you are, send it to the complaint department,
right?
Which is nowhere.
What's going to happen is we're going to get questions and then we're going to have you on again.
Yeah. Okay. Well, ladies, thanks for joining us here today. And we will be back here with you next Monday where we can catch up on all of Angela's adventures from Paris because she's going to be gone.
I'm there
and
right
then she
now.
can come back and tell us about them.
Okay.
So we'll see you back then. As always, you can check out the link to our sponsor, American Blossom Linens, in the show notes below. Be sure to check them out and use that code. Dress your bed. Give yourself a wonderful, cozy bed to climb into at night. And we will be back here with you next Monday. Cheers.
Cheers.